Hello students, welcome to a session on error identification. As you are all aware, error identification questions are very important because they form a major chunk among the grammar questions in all bank exams. It has been observed that over the past years, these question types have been modified so that they appear to be a little more challenging, at least upon sight. Let me assure you, there's no great challenge associated with them. The only thing that you need to do is to read the sentences carefully and then decide which part has an error. Follow the directions, because that's where most of you can get confused if instead of marking the incorrect answer choice, you end up marking the one which is right. Then you may get, you may trip and fall and mark a wrong answer choice. So apart from that, there is no great challenge that is related with these questions, and you can sail over them smoothly with some practice and a little bit of paying attention to detail. Of course, some understanding of grammatical concepts is also very important. So on this note, I will begin with a few sample questions that I have brought for your guidance and for your sake. Before I start and before the questions start appearing to you on the screen, let me tell you how these questions run. Now, these question types are differently formatted. So at first, we need to understand how they are structured. Now, there is a sentence given to you, a long drawn sentence, and in that sentence, a few parts are bold and highlighted. You need not consider those parts as erroneous, because they are absolutely free of error, and the directions will tell you this. The parts which are not highlighted and not in bold have errors in them. You need to look at each of these parts in conjunction with the parts that are highlighted and mark that option as your answer, which is absolutely correct in terms of grammar. I hope this is clear. So let's begin. I have a few questions for you which will really give you an insight as into how to answer these questions correctly. Look at the first question as it appears on the screen for you. The financial analog of portfolio model and its association with Michael Bloomberg when he was mayor of New York City has made the term pejorative among those who talk of education being privatized, but the portfolio model is actually less likely a pure market in education because it takes choices away from parents. Okay, so on the screen, I think you can note that when he was mayor of New York City is highlighted, and because it takes choices away from parents is also highlighted. So you can rest assured these parts do not have any error in them. Let us look at the parts which are not highlighted and look for errors so that we can identify and eliminate them and then arrive at the correct one. The first part says the financial analog of portfolio model. Now, financial analog is an incorrect collocation. We have the term as financial analogy because that's what's been mentioned here. So the word analog needs to be changed to analogy. That means part A cannot be your answer choice because it has an error. And it apostrophe S association with Michael Bloomberg. Now, it apostrophe S is actually a contracted or a shortened form of it is, which is written as its and should not be considered interchangeable with the pronoun its. So while its is a pronoun, it apostrophe s is the contraction of it is. Now in this, we cannot have an it is association with Michael Bloomberg, which would be grammatically incorrect. So we have to change it to the pronoun, to its pronoun form its. We understand to also has an error and it cannot be your answer choice. Has made the term pejorative among those who talk of education being privatized. Well, it appears to be correct. Let me also tell you the meaning of the word pejorative, which means derogatory or something which is insulting in nature. But the portfolio model is actually less likely a pure market in education. Over here, less likely doesn't make sense. The word likely, the adverb likely must be changed to like. It is actually less like a pure mark it in education, because here a comparison has been intended. So, we understand 1, 2 and 4 have errors. 5 of course has no error and we cannot go for it. The answer is option 3, which is error free. Fine, we move on to the next question. David Shulkin, the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, did a dimwitty thing when he took a leisurely trip to Europe in July 2017 at taxpayers' expense, and the government paid his wife's travel costs while the pair toured Westminster Abbey and cruised down Thames. Fine. In this sentence, as in the previous one part is highlighted, which is that the government paid his wife's travel costs, which is there for you to take a look at. Now, let us look at each of the parts individually. Did a dim-witty thing when he took a leisurely trip to Europe. In this sentence, the adjective phrase dim-witty is incorrect. Fine. So, dim-witted is the correct form or the correct expression, and we need to change dim-witty to dim-witted. So, part 1 is not our choice because it has an error. In July 2017 at taxpayers' expense. Now, in the word taxpayers, the apostrophe has been omitted. It should be taxpayers followed by an apostrophe. Taxpayers apostrophe expense. So, that means at the expense of taxpayers, and in the absence of the apostrophe, the sentence gets grammatically incorrect. While the pair toured Westminster Abbey. Well, I find no error over here. So, this probably could be our answer choice. But wait, let's just check the final parts. And cruised down Thames. Now, Thames is the name of a river, and the names of all rivers, oceans, etc. must be preceded by the definite article the. So, it should read as the Thames and not Thames alone, which makes even this part erroneous. The answer is 3. While the tour paired Westminster Abbey has absolutely no grammatical error in it. Let us look at the third question now. Less coverage was given to later investigations, which has been largely unable to blame the deaths in the extended waiting times, and most Americans would be shocked to learn that the Veterans Affairs health system actually seems to provide higher quality care than its competitors. In this sentence, as you would be seeing on the screen, 2 parts have been highlighted. Less coverage was given to later investigations, and the concluding part, higher quality care than its competitors. But when we read the sentence and we look for grammatical errors, we need to consider each of these parts because they associate or relate with each other. So, when we read less coverage was given to later investigations and there is a comma followed by the relative pronoun which, we understand that the subject of the clause that follows which is the plural noun investigation, and because investigations is plural, the verb which follows which should also be in the plural form, which is not, and therefore it has to be changed. Which have been largely unable to blame the deaths is incorrect. It should read as which have been. So, we realize there is a subject verb disagreement error, and then we move on to the second part. The second part reads as in the extended waiting times and most Americans. Now, in the extended waiting time has an inappropriate preposition. The preposition is to be on, because when you read this part in the main sentence, it would give you more clarity. It says unable to blame the deaths in the extended waiting time. Now, we don't blame something in something, we blame something on somebody or on something. So, the correct preposition here should be on and not in. Fine. So, this option also has an error. We move on to the next one here. Would be shocked to learn that the Veterans Affairs. I think this error is similar to the one we just came across in the previous question, where the apostrophe is missing. Because it is talking about affairs related to veterans, it should be veterans apostrophe and affairs and not just veterans without the apostrophe. That means affairs that relate to many veterans. Fine. So, this part also has an error. Health system actually seems to provide. I don't see any error over here, and therefore we mark 4 as our answer and then move on to the next question. So, I hope I am being able to give you the clarity that you need so that you are able to understand this question type. Am I? Okay, a few more questions for you now. He joined a straggling column of fugitive children, mostly boys, who trekked hundreds of miles east to Ethiopia to escape the war and rebel press gangs, but another war breaks out there, so they trekked back across Sudan to Kenya. The highlighted parts are again, he joined a straggling column of fugitive children, so we don't have to consider those, and they trekked back across Sudan to Kenya also is highlighted. We look at the remaining parts. The first option has the part mostly boys who trekked hundreds of miles. Now, hundreds of miles is incorrect because it is 100, which is plural, the noun should also be in the plural. Hundreds of miles and not hundreds of miles. East to Ethiopia to escapes the war. Here we see that a to infinitive has been used. To plus escape, and any to infinitive is always in the singular. It cannot be to escapes. So, we correct it to escape and understand that this part also is erroneous. And rebel press gangs. Well, this appears to be correct, fine. But another war breaks out there. Now, when you read the sentence, you realize it's a narrative of the past. So, something about the past is being told to us, and therefore, the verb cannot be changed from past to present tense. We need to keep the verb in the past. So, breaks has to change to broke. Another war broke out there. Fine. The answer to this question is 3. Please pay attention to the next question as it appears on the screen. When Bill Clinton called for the first summit of the Americas in Miami in 1994, he wanted, for celebrating the shared commitment of all 34 countries in the hemisphere to democracy and free trade, all that is exception Cuba, the 35th, which was not invited, and at the 7th summit in Panama in 2015, regional solidarity prevailed. Okay, so the highlighted parts apart, let us consider the ones which are not and look for errors. When Bill Clinton called for the first summit of the Americas. Now, in this case, the preposition for is uncalled for. It is out of place, it is redundant. We do not need it in the position where it is. So, it's clear and good enough to say when Bill Clinton called the first summit. So, part 1 has an error. In Miami in 1994, he wanted, for celebrating the shared commitment. Again here, wanted not for celebrating, but wanted to celebrate. We want to do something and we don't want for doing something. So, there is a grammatical error here as well. All that is exception Cuba, the 35th. The idea is to make you understand that except Cuba, everybody else was invited. So, it's an incorrect way of putting across this idea. We need to change it to all that is except Cuba, or we could probably go with all that is with the exception of Cuba. Whichever the case may be, 3 also is erroneous. Which was not invited and at the 7th summit in Panama in 2015. Well, there is nothing that is wrong or inconsistent, and I guess we can go ahead and mark 4 as our answer. Okay. So, for question number 5, the answer is option 4. Well, we come to the next question. Question number 6 for you. Many Zimbabweans hope on a rosier future after decades of economic decline punctuated by bouts of horrific violence orchestrated by the ruling party, and foreign investors is sniffing around for the first time since the land grab began. Okay. The first option has the words many Zimbabweans hope on a rosy future. There is a direct error because the idea conveyed is that they were looking forward to something, and using the word hope, we have to follow it with the preposition for. So, we hope for something, which means we look forward to something and want something, and the preposition on over here is out of place. So, 1 is erroneous. Punctuated by bouts of horrific violence. Well, I don't think there is anything wrong with this. So, before marking 2 as the answer, let me discuss the remaining parts with you, and then we will consider this as our answer. And foreign investors is sniffing around. So, there is a clear subject verb discord error. That means the subject and the verb are not in agreement with each other. Subject over here is plural foreign investors, and the auxiliary used is, which is singular. So, we need to change it to are. And foreign investors are sniffing around for the first time since the land grab begun. Now, begun is past participle, and over here we cannot use this because the situation is in the past tense, and begun again by itself is incomplete. So, we have to change begun to began. For the first time since the land grab began. Fine. So, keeping all these errors and their corrections in mind, we mark 2 as the correct option, and then I move on to the next question in this series. Although the Israeli government has long exempted churches from taxes, Jerusalem municipality has demanded that their businesses pays local levies, and this dispute was supposed to be resolved in talks with the Vatican, but these have dragged away for 2 decades. Okay. So, although the Israeli government has long exempted is highlighted, we understand that it has to be grammatically correct. Was supposed to be resolved in talks also is highlighted and grammatically correct. Let us look at the other parts. Churches from taxes, Jerusalem municipality has demanded. Because it is Jerusalem municipality, municipality has to be preceded by the definite article the, because it's the one and only that a city has. So, we need to say churches from taxes the Jerusalem municipality has demanded. Fine. So, after considering this error and correcting it, we move on to the second option, that their businesses pays local levies. The word businesses has been given to us in the plural form, and therefore, it must be followed by the verb in the plural form as well. Pays is in singular, we need to change it to pay, and the subject verb discord again can be corrected by that. Fine. So, 1 and 2 cannot be our answer choices because both of them have errors, and this dispute, clearly this is error free, which of course is our answer. Let us look at the fourth one and identify the error and know how to correct it. With the Vatican, but these have dragged away for 2 decades. Now, drag away means to push or pull something away from something else, and that's not what the idea conveyed is. The idea that is conveyed is that something has been going on endlessly and tediously, and in order to convey this, the correct phrasal verb over here should be dragged on. Okay, drag plus on is a phrasal verb, and any verb may form a number of phrasal verbs in combination with various prepositions and prepositions or adverbs. So, we need not just look at the verb that is under consideration, or that is the parent verb which forms the pair. We need to also understand what meaning it conveys, and in this case drag away is absolutely incorrect. So, we change it to dragged on for 2 decades, which means a time period for which it has carried on without coming to an end has been given to us. Okay. So, 1, 2 and 4 have errors in them. The correct answer is 3 because this part and this dispute is absolutely grammatically correct. So, moving towards the final question of the session, I read it out for you. Please pay attention to it as it appears to you on the board. Mr. Erdogan seems determined to keep it that way. On February 16th, a court has sentenced 6 media workers, including a prominent novelist, to lives in prison without parole on trumped up charges of involvement in an abortive coup in 2016. And the same day, Turkey released Deniz Yücel, a correspondent for a German newspaper, from pre-trial detention. Okay. The first option has the part on February 16th, a court has sentenced 6 media workers. Now, after reading the whole thing, it is clear that the reference is to a situation in the past. That means it's a past situation that is being presented to us, which takes us way back to the 2016 or even before that. So, because it is a situation of the past, it will be incorrect to use present perfect for it, because it is a case which relates with something that happened way back before 2016. It is incorrect to use present perfect with it. So, we need to change has sentenced to the past tense form, simple sentenced. Okay. On February 16th, a court sentenced 6 media workers, including a prominent novelist, to lives in prison. Now, LIFE''S in prison is incorrect. It's baseless, it's meaningless, it does not give any clarity on what is being conveyed. So, to life in prison without parole and not lives in prison without parole. Fine. On trumped up charges of involvement in a abortive coup in 2016. Now, the word abortive, which is an adjective, starts with a vowel A and it also gives out a vowel sound. So, we cannot have the article A before it, we need to have an to precede it, which is not there and which makes this part erroneous. So, on trumped up charges of involvement in an abortive coup in 2016. Fine. So, 1, 2 and 3, all these parts have errors in them, which I have discussed with you. Let us look at the fourth part now. A correspondent for a German newspaper from pre-trial detention. There is nothing wrong in this part. Each of the parts of speech in relation with the other is absolutely grammatically and logically correct, which means this is our option, which is to be marked as correct. Fine. So, we mark it as the correct choice and this brings us to the end of the session. I hope you have been able to understand this question, how it is presented, what you need to consider and how you need to go about marking it. So, the most important thing is that you read the sentence first. After reading it, understand each part in relation with the other, and then after eliminating those parts which have errors, mark on the one which is free of error. Please watch our videos on www.timeforeducation.com for more clarity on all question types related to all bank exams. Thank you.